break-even point will be reached in 2020 when we will see a similar number of people in the Middle East and North Africa and in Europe. Right now, the Arab world is one of the most food import dependent regions in the world. Up to 80% of food is imported. Lebanon is one of the countries that imports most of its food. And the problem is it cannot produce more because domestic production is limited in the case of Lebanon because of land shortages, but also water issues, water scarcity. Lebanon is doing a lot better than other countries like Jordan or Egypt, but Lebanon is similarly affected. And let me give you a few reasons why there are these problems. Look at this slide here. This is agricultural suitability, and agricultural suitability is limited except for in actually Lebanon in the Fertile Crescent, from stretching from Israel, Palestine up to Iraq and to a certain extent Iran. Turkey has agricultural suitability, and Northern Africa, but the other countries have very limited agricultural suitabilities. In particular, countries which are already very poor, Yemen, and the other very important one is Egypt. This will only intensify as a result of climate change, when in particular Iran will get more dry, when Northern Africa will be very negatively hit. So water, as a colleague in the US Department of State said, is in fact the key issue of climate change, because climate change is another form of water management in the future. And in the Middle East and North Africa, this will be the core challenge. I personally believe one of the results of the next few years, next slide please, will be a continuous trend in terms of people moving to cities. If you have water scarcity in the countryside, if land is already quite degraded, and if cities are also expanding because more people will be born and more people need to find jobs, then cities will grow. And therefore, what is going to happen is that we need to find ways to absorb people in the cities around the region, finding jobs, finding food, and this has a number of challenges, but also opportunities. It's likely that the Arab world will be more dependent on the world market, and this world market is also challenging. The world market will be mainly North America, Russia, to a certain extent Australia, and perhaps some commodities can also be imported from Sub-Saharan Africa. However, Sub-Saharan Africa needs to feed itself. If, as we've seen in the past, a country is dependent on, say, the United States of America, it might have foreign policy implications, domestic policy implications. Back in the days of Nasser, the Americans managed to call Nasser back into the Western camp through food, because they said, well, if you want to survive politically, then you need food imports, and they offered Nasser more or less free food because the Egyptian pound wasn't floated on the world market back in the days. So therefore, the Americans didn't have any use with the Egyptian pound. So therefore, they managed to just provide free wheat to the Egyptian market, and therefore bought Nasser's allegiance. So what are the key issues? What can academia do? What is it all doom and gloom? And I don't think so. First of all, the MENA region's development choices will decide upon the future. One opportunity is to adapt climate, or to find ways to introduce adapted climate smart diets. So, for example, increasing the consumption of environmentally and healthy foods, such as lentils and legumes, less red meat, which is very water intensive. Another opportunity is to identify strategic import roosters, maybe through an Arab trader, to really pool the Arab world's opportunities on the global market.
So I'd like to define the water energy food system as an interconnected primary resources of water, energy, and food. It's a system that allows us to look at interlinkages, hotspots, and trade-offs. It will also allow us to build on the knowledge that we have in these three disciplines and allow for a more sustainable interventions for the future. Martin mentioned the expansion of the city. That constitutes a huge challenge, but it's also a huge opportunity where a lot of the wastewater can be recycled into the system and be used for food production. The issues there is technology and energy prices. So how can we make targeted treatment technologies that will target certain elements that wastewater and recycle it back into affordable technologies for reuse for agriculture?
We are the first and, to our knowledge, only program that deals with these issues of food security in the MENA region at the graduate level as a formal program. The program, while it's housed at FAFS, is actually overseen by a committee that also draws from experts outside of the faculty as well and across the university.
So the question is, to what extent is the UN Convention of Watercourses, which is now in force, over 40 countries have ratified, and the view, if you like, in terms of how the Groundwater Convention could move forward. Because I think it'd be an excellent area for there to be cooperation between all the states in the region.
Thank you. Martin, do you want to start?
With great pleasure. Thank you very much, Tony, for a very important topic, the transboundary water relations of the region. The three food bowls, the Nile, the Euphrates and Tigris, and the Jordan River Basin are not exclusively Arab, as we know. I mean, just look at the Euphrates and Tigris. It's Turkey is what is called the water hegemon in the literature. They've built dams. They've created, in fact, a new reality by also expanding their agricultural production size by 1.8 million hectares, and they're depriving the countries in downstream the Euphrates and Tigris of access to water and water quality. So Syria and Iraq are negatively affected by the choices that have been made by Turkey. The same applies, a very famous case is obviously the Jordan River Basin. We see Israel as the water hegemon in the literature, and we see Jordan and the Palestinians having no access or very limited access to water resources. And then we see the Nile Basin, and the Nile Basin, I mentioned, it's fascinating. We see exploding populations in the next 80 years. And interestingly, they have nothing but the river and some groundwater.